right, cool. All right, cool. So you guys are watching Revolt TV. I go by the name of Dev T. Smith. We're here today to talk about what I think is the new black renaissance that's happening across pop culture. Every set of decades, we kind of hit a point where we elevate a little bit higher in terms of our influence on the culture and how we own that. And I think right now we're going through a space where we're acknowledging the fact that we influence $1 billion industry. We don't necessarily have ownership over all of it, but I think that right now we know that we're worth a hell of a lot, and I think that transition is starting to happen where significant figures across sports, fashion, music, I think they're getting to the point now where they're starting to really acknowledge the fact that they need to steer the ship in terms of their careers and their contribution to what we know brings in a whole lot of money and a whole lot of effect and impact on society, right? So I wanted to progress into it by first talking about where we are as a society right now. I think there's a lot going on politically. I think there's a lot going on in terms of progressive thought, in terms of education. I think there's a lot happening in terms of the demand for equality across the board and real equality, not something that just pacifies society. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to kick it off by talking about where we stand right now in terms of sexism, in terms of racism, in terms of equal opportunity. And I'll let you kick it off, Cam, with how you feel about sexism right now. You got it, Mac. Ask the lady first.
How I feel about sexism right now. That's a hefty question. I think that within the workplace, there is a need to have more open dialogue about sexism and about misogyny across the board, because not every example of this is overt or is something dramatic. Sometimes it's a joke that someone cracks with you, or sometimes you're sitting around having a real conversation with colleagues and you didn't expect the dialogue to shift in a way where it's wow, I didn't really think you had views like that, but now I know. You know what I mean? And I think that the more open that the dialogue becomes and the more proactive women are about asserting themselves and addressing these moments when they happen, the better results we will see. I think that, a lot of what we're experiencing within media and this era of social media is hypersexual, and that leaves an open space where people feel more comfortable kind of making some of the jokes or statements or doing certain things to women in a way that is rather callous, and they don't really care too much or not thinking too much about it, and they think it's oh, well, it was very innocent and it was in a childlike way and that type of thing, but it doesn't make it excusable. And I think that the more that women capitalize on those moments and addressing them when they happen, the better position we'll find ourselves in.
Do you feel we're at a point where do you feel it's gotten better within the recent years in terms of everything that you spoke
I think it's gotten better only because more women occupy the workplace. Mm-hmm. So, there are a lot more, at least within New York City, I see a lot more women getting up to go to work in the morning than men do. And, there is something to be said about what's happening there economically. But I think that because women are gaining more power in the workplace than maybe in times past, that the dialogue is changing, because it has to. We're becoming more diverse in that sense. And so what are you really going to do when it could, if your boss is a woman, you're not going to shoot a cheeky joke no, nah, cut your checks, nah. So, it's that respect for just the woman's presence overall. I think oftentimes we've been in this space where men serve as the dominant, and are the provider and caregiver in a monetary sense when it comes to job roles and things like that. And we're shifting from that. We're shifting from that completely. It's the both of us. The both of us have to do this. Like, so being in a society that's like that, it warrants that level of respect. It warrants that level of equality. And, you know, we can't just passively address these issues. They have to be addressed head on. And so,
do you think that through a lens of pop culture, do you feel like women are owning more of the fact that stuff has to be demanded? Do you see more like faces popping up in terms of like personalities and voices that are dominating the space? And I'll give an example, like from an entertainment perspective. I mean, you've got, let's say Scotty, for example. Scotty Beam, like she has an audience of her own. She can like demand that respect, right? You've got that, and you can go to politically. You got Simone Sanders, who's on CNN like every day, and she's 27. She's a young black woman. Like, do you see more of that happening now and in the future? Do you think that's going to be more of the norm?
I believe so. I believe that those are two very good examples of just kind of the space that women occupy now and the level of, you know, notoriety that comes with them that they've earned. You know, it's in the most literal sense, it takes that acknowledgement from your peers alike to really push that forward, because Scotty and Simone could wave their flags until forever and say, listen, I want my respect, but if it's not given, then it's not given. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that's that. I think that their presence and the integrity at what they do, and then the notoriety that comes with the work that they've done, really pushes that initiative, you know?
I think too to that, you know, I think to that point, you also have more representation now, right? Like, I even think, as you're giving examples, I think about, you talk about Simone, I think about Angela Rye. You talk about, you know, people in entertainment, I think Ava DuVernay, I think Shonda Rhimes, I think Issa, I think, like, people who now are just breaking down the doors, like kicking down the doors, and being the figures that now you have options. Like, now young women have options, and they come up in a social media era where people are deciding if women want to just be people who take selfies all day, if they want to be bosses and entrepreneurs, if they want to be change makers, if they want to be different things. I think now you just see more of a balance and representation of what women can truly aspire to be and the type of strides that they can make. Yeah. And I think when you see the success of a Shonda Rhimes, who now can say, I don't even need the network anymore, I can go do my own deals. When you have Ava, who's done what she's done in the space that she's done it in, it's also now being able to say, like, that's how you can demand that level of respect, because you're not just coming in saying, because I'm a woman, I need this respect. You're coming in and saying, I'm a woman, I'm doing things at the same level, if not higher. And on top of that, I represent a whole new shift in the way that you have to see women and what we can do and what we're capable of. And I feel like when you talk about this new Renaissance idea, that's the beauty of it, is it's across industries, it's across the board. It's not just saying, you know, entertainment or sports or politics. It's like doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, people, like, you're just seeing it across the board. So when I think of that, to your point, I think it's getting to a point where you're just seeing representation matters. You know, like, you only aspire to what you're exposed to. And I think now we're starting to see just a more diverse look, and these women are owning it. You know, that's the difference too. It's not like you're just putting them on a platform and then they're just saying, look at me, that's the example. No, these women are like vocal, like, yo, you know what I'm saying? And they're telling other women, and they're telling people, like, yo, we're here and we're making moves, you know? So I think that representation is really raised the bar a little bit.
Absolutely. And if I could speak on it real quick, and even in terms of like the representation and the diversity, what you mentioned in Easton, like a lot of these other women, I feel like for a long time, like when we thought of a successful woman, or let's say a successful businesswoman, she had a certain look, at least to me, whereas now Issa is relatable to certain girls. Like, I'm from the Bronx, like a lot of my friends are from certain environments, so when they saw successful women, they didn't see themselves, they didn't see, I could be that. Whereas now it's like there's so many examples of women that are killing it, and not even just across industries, but in different ways. and they have different looks, they have different viewpoints, they have and then the platforms that they're on, they're allowed to be more vocal. Because I feel like at one point, even some of the most successful women, they didn't have a voice that was able to I guess, travel and impact and influence so many different people. Whereas now, like, we can hear, whether it's because of social media, whether it's because more people are interested in interviewing them and having those discussions with them one-on-one, we can get more of a viewpoint of what it's like to be a lot of these women, and not just the traditional conversation of I'm a woman in the workplace, here's my story, but it could be I'm a woman from the Bronx, from the projects in the Bronx, and now I'm the CEO of this, or now I'm this. So I think nowadays we have more access to a variety of women from all walks of life or backgrounds, or just in different viewpoints, and it allows so many young girls to see these people and actually identify with them, whereas before not everybody could identify with Oprah, even though she has a story and she's from a similar place. Like Oprah, by the time, at least from the way I look at it, by the time she was Oprah, she was just Oprah. I never really thought about Oprah's story. Even though I heard the story, it didn't like resonate. Whereas now, a lot of the women that we do have that are at the forefront of these industries or at the forefront of these movements or trends or whatever, we have more access to who they are, what their story is. So it just allows a lot of young girls to be more comfortable and to say, I can own that, I could be that, I could win. Because not every girl thought they could be Oprah. Yeah, but like when you mention Issa and like a lot of these other young ladies, like, that are killing shit on so many different ways, young girls are saying like, yo, I could do that, like I could do that. So
I mean, and you talk about the Bronx, and it instantly made me think of Cardi B. You're like,
perfect example.
How many young girls came
maybe
up
not
and
perfect,
looked at her story and they said, wow, she can actually boss up and go do something. Now, you'll have critics who may say, oh, well, she still had to go to rap route, or she still had to go this, but it's like when you talk to her now, when you hear her talk, it's like now when you hear her talk, then you hear her story, now you're connecting that to, yo, she transcended reality TV. How many young girls have you seen get out of the reality TV trap and the image behind that and that whole wave? Then to like take it to another level, it's like, whether you like it or not, there's now a whole flock of young girls who live in the Heights or live off Prospect Ave, or, you know what I'm saying, that are looking like, yo, okay, even if we have to strip now, if we're stripping now, there's still like, that's not who we are. We can still be more and do more. Yeah, it's like that means something.
We identified as a
exactly, right.
A lot of the successes we've seen over the past several years or whatnot have also shown that component, whereas you were identified, or you were labeled, like this is what you are, this is what you do. So in at least the way I look at it now, it's like, let's use Cardi as the example. Like, she's Cardi B now. Like, we're not just looking at her as the stripper or the rapper or the girl that sings Bodak Black. She's Cardi B. And so many of these other women, Shonda Rhimes, like certain people don't even understand all of what Shonda does, but they can identify that that's Shonda Rhimes, and I know her Netflix deal. I know that she's killing on ABC. They might not have ever watched Grey's Anatomy or any of these shows, but because Shonda is such a force that's like damn near at the center of her industry, it's like you can't deny that her and what she brings to the table exists.
And I think that
you were talking about is like when you make a wave that big, like when you make a shift that big,
you can't deny that.
You can't try to throw nothing at it. Like the number speaks for itself. Grey's Anatomy speaks for itself. Scandal speaks for itself. These are the biggest shows on television, not male shows, female shows.
Not urban television.
Yeah, right.
And you know, also, a lot of these women are discovering the powers of having their own platform, where, you know, like they aren't, you know, like they don't have to rely on a man to tell them when to speak and to tell them what to say. You know, Issa Rae created her own show. Angela Rye, even though she commentates on other shows, she has her own podcast. Shonda Rhimes has her own. I think she has her own studio at this point.
Yeah, it's just Shondaland.
Yeah. So, you know, women are, you know, like, so when women are really discovering the power of having their own platforms and not just relying on the bigger platforms that are already out there, even though they know how to use those platforms to build their audience, they also realize how to use their own startup capital and their own startup ideas and to work from scratch.
Like women can say no.
Yeah, they have that power. And I think that lends to like the next point is like like classism and racism, what you guys said about Cardi B really stuck out to me, like just across the spectrum, because I think up until this point, we've dealt with like a very like, there's a certain level of like classism and racism that we deal with, right? And I think that when you speak about a Cardi B who can come from where she came from, and now she's got the #1 song in the country right now, like she
W magazine features. Like,
yeah,
there's no reason why we would have expected that to happen.
We would never expect that. But I think what's great about it is her and so many people like her completely own all of who they are, and like they make themselves the business, right? They make themselves the product. You know what I'm saying? And I think because of that, we're able to transcend like racism and transcend classism. Not that these things don't exist, but I think that before, I think that now we're in a place where the true people who are creating culture, like they force the issue to be acknowledged for that, and to speak on their expertise, and to own their space, right? And I think that is what we're dealing with in pop culture right now. I want to move to kind of a few instances that we're seeing. I think that us as a society, we look at people who are like big names or big personalities in pop culture almost like statesmen in a way. Like we respect them for their work, we respect them for their experiences, and we allow them to kind of set the pace for, you know, how we're gonna follow suit and try to build our own empires, right? So when you look at like a LeBron James, like in the past, athletes, like, let's not get it twisted, like athletes, mostly black athletes, like they make the show. Like when you had Jordan, like nobody was watching, like he was Showtime, like not, I mean, I know that's the Lakers, but he was really like it was a spectacle. It was prime time. He made it so the NBA got all those multi-billion-dollar deals for the playoff coverage and stuff like that. It wasn't like that before him. You have Allen Iverson, who made it cool to, you know what I'm saying, even be in the NBA, the cornrows, the tattoos. These people are getting sneaker deals and all kinds of stuff, and you know, these sneaker deals are worth billions of dollars, and they're seeing a fraction of what that worth is, right? And they're signing contracts and doing this whole like loyalty thing to teams that would never show the same loyalty. I mean, you look at Isaiah Thomas, he just got traded from a team he literally went and played the day after his sister died to get them a W, you know what I'm saying? I think they lost that game. But the point is, there's no loyalty there. And I think LeBron is the first person to kind of own that. Like, you know, I read a stat where the restaurants and the businesses around Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, like when he left, they show profit losses of like 90%. You know what I mean?
He brought $400 million back
there
to
you
the
go.
city when he came back.
He's an economy on his own.
Exactly, but he acknowledges that. In the past, I don't think that, this is what I mean, where I keep driving that point where we're acknowledging the economic influence that we have, you know, via pop culture. He knows, like, whatever city I go to, you guys are gonna see more business. You're gonna see more ticket sales. I think the ticket sales, like, I think they went back up like 30% when he came back. The bars and restaurants around the arena reported profit growth by like from anywhere from 30 to 200%. Like, he knows that. So it's like, I want my max contract. I'm only gonna sign for 3 years. You're gonna pay me every dollar that I'm asking for, and then I'll make a decision whether or not I'm gonna stay. And at first, a lot of people gave him crap for that. You know what I mean? Because, you know, they're used to the old model of players sticking with the team for 10 years and doing it the Paul Pierce way. And it's like, nah. If everybody around me's pockets are getting fatter because of me simply being here, you know what I mean? I'll sell out this arena and I might have a terrible game. You know what I mean? But the fact that I'm here is gonna fill these seats, which is gonna make somebody's pockets fat. I'm gonna own that. And I think that's strong. I think we look at experiences like that. I think we look at Shonda Rhimes, who literally is television. You know what I mean? And she owns that. Like, nah, I'm gonna leave ABC and I'm gonna go to Netflix and I'm gonna be in charge of creating exclusive content, and we're going to rival Disney. Like, that's huge to me. I think when you look at a Colin Kaepernick and you say like look what just him kneeling did, right? You have a league full of people who don't want to see 70% of their league, which is black people, feeling like, you know what, I'm gonna kneel too.
But that's the thing. I think even when you look at LeBron, as smart, as genius as LeBron is and the team around him, it took we'll just say they had to bear the burden. Right. It took Iverson and all these people, Jordan bearing the burden. Because I would argue one of the things that's not usually talked about is that in that era, because it was the first time people were getting sneaker deals and money like that, they were still playing for the love of the game.
Right.
They still were in the league because they were just like, we want to be the
dream.
greatest players ever. Like Michael Jordan was like, I want to be the greatest player ever. So I don't even know if they expected that their deals would be $100 million, $200 million, you know, and we're thinking about what that really meant on a bigger scale. I feel like Iverson was just like, yo, I want to be the greatest player ever. I want to dominate. And that was just him. I don't even think he was thinking about, yo, I'm changing the league. He wore cornrows. He wore headbands. He wore arm sleeves. Like, that was him. So I feel like the impact of that happened, and it's almost half like smartening up and being aware and half necessity, because now it's like, if you don't, when you see how big it is now, if you don't take advantage of it and you don't take ownership of it, somebody's going to, and somebody's